Hi there, and welcome to this module in the Management Micro Skills series, Tips for Becoming a Better Manager. In this module, we'll be looking at giving effective feedback. The thing is that this is one of the single most important drivers of success in any organisation, and yet it's also afforded very little attention in any of the training programs available for school managers or leaders. It's also the cause of a great deal of anxiety and stress, and so is often either avoided or fudged, or overmanaged in a way that renders it worse than useless. It doesn't have to be this hard. And this guide walks you through the basics of how to give effective, results-oriented feedback so that it can become an integral part of how you work with others. Imagine this scenario. It's a dark Monday morning in mid-December and you're on your knees. The last thing you needed to hear was the first thing that you heard. Sam, one of your direct reports, was rude to a senior leader on Friday and some questions have been asked. You work well with Sam. She's one of your rising stars and has never put a foot wrong. But your senior colleague was upset and has taken it up with your manager. Is it worth raising the issue with Sam and risking your relationship with her? Well, yes. Giving constructive feedback when it's needed is a vital component of creating an open, safe and productive work environment. And it doesn't have to threaten your relationships. But you must give that feedback in the right way and at the right time so that the recipient can use what they hear to improve their performance and that of their team and the wider organisation. Although the idea of giving feedback can often feel intimidating, it's helpful to remember that doing so is an essential way of developing both the individual and their effectiveness. The benefits of sharing your observations with others about their job performance are broad and are, when you think about it, the only way to enable understanding and bring about positive change. So with Sam, you'll want to explore what happened and why, bring about some degree of reparation, and then use it as an opportunity for her growth and development, as well as the school's. Feedback is often corrective, intended to help someone change the way they work when their current approaches aren't working. It can also be more purely developmental, reinforcing good work and positive habits or behaviours. It's an important way to demonstrate that you're attentive to your colleagues and you notice their work, and to either signal appreciation or clarify expectations. When done well, feedback can be incredibly motivational too, contributing to learning, development, and better performance. Giving and receiving feedback should be a regular part of everyone's job, and it certainly shouldn't be seen as something that a manager does to a direct report. In some situations, it's important for people to provide feedback to their boss too. Indeed, good leaders invite it. So what do we need to know and to do to make feedback more effective? Firstly, providing feedback is not merely a box to tick when the time for performance reviews comes around. It should be an ongoing habit that's woven into the fabric of everyone's everyday work. It should be the norm. This is not the same as saying that every action or behaviour requires a response. It's not uncommon for organisations or managers to go over the top with giving appreciation, and this can be counterproductive as well as irritating. Feedback is most likely to have a positive, lasting effect when its focus is on behaviour that the recipient is able to dial down or amplify, and its delivery is well timed. Importantly, if you become known for giving positive feedback frequently, your negative feedback, provided it's justified, is more likely to be welcomed as credible and well meant. On the flip side, if you become known for offering input only when problems arise, you are likely to become seen as unappreciative or petty. These perceptions are especially likely if the recipient of your feedback doubts your motives. So before you give feedback, ask yourself why you really want to give it. What's really driving you? Sometimes you may be reacting to your own needs and preferences, maybe protecting your reputation rather than what's best for the team or the organisation. An important thing to consider is whether the behaviour can actually be changed, whether feedback is likely to work, or just be a waste of time. The goal of a feedback conversation is to improve performance either by reinforcing positive behaviour or addressing shortcomings. It's not about airing your grievances or criticising. Your responsibility as a manager is to focus on the future that you and the school needs by addressing the specific changes you want someone to make. And that has to start with careful planning. You need to get all the information you can about the behaviour in question and how it's affecting the team or project. Think about what you'll do if the person disagrees with the facts you raise, or if they bring up evidence you didn't know about. You should then make a plan for the conversation and to be ready to listen. Above all, think about what you want to achieve from the conversation and what you want both parties to leave with as a result. It can be useful to organise your thoughts on all of this in writing. The opening few seconds of a feedback discussion are really important. When the feedback is to be positive, it's pretty easy to send good early signals. It can be more difficult to kick off a corrective feedback discussion in a positive way, though. But it is important to try to do so, as this minimises the chance of someone closing down before you've even begun. This process includes not just what you want to say, but also the setting and the care you've taken over its selection and preparation. The guide provides you with some very specific advice on this. It also provides advice on how to get the dialogue going. But what do we mean by dialogue? In essence, dialogue is a process that involves a mutual attempt by two or more people to work together towards a common understanding through active and compassionate listening, in order to explore similarities and understand differences in perspectives and opinions. This is not the same thing as a conversation nor a debate, and it's not about convincing others to agree with one's perspective. Rather, the aim is to overcome misunderstandings or misperceptions and to build relationship on the basis of mutual understanding and respect. Now, this sounds slightly problematic in terms of when you need to give someone corrective feedback, perhaps, but the principles remain. You're trying to understand why something happened and perhaps clarify a general set of expectations that mean it shouldn't happen again. And again, a list of approaches to this are provided in the guide. Giving feedback then, especially when it's corrective, can be tricky. Many people are just glad when a session is over and they're back at their desk, but that's not the end of it. For the feedback to have impact and to be effective, and for the session to have been worth all the planning, it needs to result in some kind of a change or action. First, you need to clarify and agree on the next steps. In the case of positive feedback, think about sharing the person's good work as an example, or suggest that they train or coach colleagues in the relevant area. It's easy to miss opportunities to both share and amplify successful practice like this, though it's important that the recipient buys into the plan and agrees. Being Employee of the Month is not always thought of as a badge of honour. Where the focus has been on giving corrective feedback, your aim should be to build on what was discussed in the session, with a particular focus on the root cause of the issue. Your approach can include incentivizing change, formalizing change, or getting creative and adapting to needs. Regardless of the approach, it's vital that everybody is clear on the forward plan. Therefore, you should summarize the plan and list the steps. Ensure that the recipient knows and shows that they understand and agree with the next steps. Revise anything that needs revision, and include expectations around timescales or deadlines. If this all sounds a bit collaborative, that's the point. Remember that feedback is a dialogue, so the plan that follows it should, as far as possible, be co-created and jointly owned. This is about your colleagues' development as well as organisational improvement, and their having a stake in the process greatly increases the chances that they'll follow through. On which note, you will also need to follow up either by reinforcing the impact of positive behaviour or checking on the correction of the things that went awry. Most of the time, feedback sessions will go really well. People will engage, and over time, your preparation, hard work, and consistency will create a culture in which feedback is an expected part of the game. Occasionally, though, the situation will be more complicated, and it's important both to acknowledge that this is a possibility and to prepare for when it might go south. Because some people just find taking feedback tough and remain uncommunicative even when it's positive. There might be all sorts of reasons for this, none of which are your business really. Though, as we've discussed above, giving feedback is your business. In other cases, you might need to give feedback to a high performer or even your boss, both of which come with certain health warnings and particular ways of approaching it. This guide provides some very good advice on these scenarios in particular. The best way to keep things more straightforward is to create a work environment that encourages and welcomes feedback. And that's the focus of the final section of the guide. Feedback is most likely to be welcomed and lead to constructive change when it's expected, and when the recipient understands the person giving them feedback has the best of intentions. In turn, the best way to enable that is to create a general climate in which feedback is just part of the fabric and everyday working life. Ideally, you want feedback to be sought as well as provided. Do what you can to ensure that feedback, whether positive or negative, positive or corrective, is seen within your team as a continuous process of organisational improvement rather than something ad hoc or only for performance review time. Of course, the best way to demonstrate this is by modelling it in your own behaviour. So set an example by giving feedback yourself to your colleagues consistently and visibly, and inviting it from others. Discussing performance and acknowledging great work frequently and in public is a great way to establish a culture in which feedback is the norm. Invite everybody on your team to do the same and to acknowledge when they do. And involve everybody, not just leaders and managers. Everybody should be part of your feedback strategy. Otherwise, you're creating a sect, not a culture. The more you establish an inclusive climate of useful feedback, the more natural the process will become for everyone. But it does take effort, and it does require leadership, even after it's become more habitual. Mastering the art of giving effective feedback takes time and attention too, but it is worth it. And I hope that the guidance provided here is useful to you in your work. Thank you very much.